I've walked through torn skies and bled through bending time, but nothing unnerves me like silence in the fracture zone. The breach ahead was small, barely a ripple, but it hummed wrong. Not in frequency, in feeling. That's the part no one ever teaches you. The void talks in feelings. It's not a sound. It's something in your bones, like your blood remembers something your mind forgot. I hovered near the edge of the rift in my exosuit, boots anchored to a magnetic tether. Stars bent around the distortion like water circling a drain. Light twisted into slow spirals, and shadows stuttered in and out of places they shouldn't be. Normal breaches shimmer. This one pulsed. "Vix," I said, subvocalizing through the throat mic. Record anomaly Delta 07. Visual distortion consistent with Class 3 spatial tear. But there's something else. My onboard AI answered in a calm, female voice. Delta 07 acknowledged. Unusual energy pattern detected. Temporal residue. 5 years, 2 months, 16 days. I stopped breathing. 5 years, 2 months, 16 days ago was the day Mara disappeared. I shouldn't have gotten closer, but I did. The field of the rift pulled at the suit like static tugging fabric. There was something inside. Something familiar. It flickered through the breach like a shadow behind frosted glass. The outline of a person. Small. Thin. Hair drifting like it was underwater. My twin sister. It couldn't be. Mara was gone. Swallowed by a collapse during a failed containment in the bleed. No signal, no body. Nothing but screaming telemetry and a final, broken sound that still haunted my dreams. But this breach, this ghost, wore her shape. I reached out, fingers brushing the air between us. The moment my glove crossed the edge, a sudden crackle of static shot through my comms. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 5 years poured through the distortion like smoke. "Adam." I yanked my hand back. "Vix, confirm voice source." "Who was that?" "Voiceprint analysis in progress," Vix replied. "Match, 92%. Edward Kale." I froze. "Repeat," I whispered. "Voiceprint match, 92%. Edward Kale. Status deceased." Edward. The founder of the Voidwalkers. My former mentor. The man who burned half a reality trying to control time, and vanished in the process. Officially dead. Unofficially? I never believed it. The breach pulsed again, faster now, unstable. Light inside twisted, and the image of Mara disappeared in a flicker. A second later, the rift snapped shut like a blink, leaving only silence. "Vix," I said slowly, "log the entire encounter. Encrypt it under Black Channel Protocol. Do not forward to command. Encryption complete. Adam, this violates standing code." "I know." I turned back toward Outpost V7, its jagged silhouette floating against the fractured horizon. I should have reported everything, protocol demanded it. But I couldn't. Not until I understood what I'd just seen. If Edward was alive, if Mara still existed in some fractured piece of space, then everything we believed about preserving timelines, about the code we swore to follow, might be a lie. And me? I was about to break the first rule we're trained never to question. Don't chase ghosts through the void. But I just saw one. And I wasn't letting go. Not this time. Not her. Not again. The moment I crossed the event horizon of the breach, everything changed. Colors twisted. Sound warped. My body felt like it was falling and floating at the same time. I couldn't tell if seconds or years were passing. That's the thing about the bleed, it doesn't follow time. It leaks it, stretches it, snaps it like old wire. Inside, the world had no sky. It wasn't dark, just colorless, like someone had drained the hue from reality. Debris from broken timelines drifted lazily past me. Flickers of buildings, bits of language, frozen people caught mid-sentence. It felt like walking through the ghost of a forgotten dream. "Vix," I whispered into my comm, "you with me?" No answer. Figures. Even quantum AI has a hard time staying stable here. I gripped my reality anchor tighter, a chrome rod no longer than my forearm. The Voidwalker insignia glowed faintly on its side, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. As long as I held it, I wouldn't drift too far from the center of myself. I hoped. The signature that brought me here was real. It wasn't just a glitch in the scan logs. It had Mara's imprint. My sister's. That wasn't something you imagined, not in this place. Not in the bleed. I moved forward, slow and steady, boots pressing down on a surface that didn't really exist. The terrain beneath me shifted with every step, sometimes glass, sometimes smoke, sometimes liquid. But my suit held. Just barely. Then I saw her. Not all of her, Just a flicker, maybe 30 meters ahead. A shape. Thin. Short hair. A familiar tilt of the head, like she was listening for something no one else could hear. Mara? My voice cracked. I didn't know if the sound reached her. Maybe I didn't care. I ran. It was like sprinting through molasses. Every step stretched forever. The closer I got, the more the bleed resisted me, time loops coiling around my limbs like vines. My past flashed in my head in pieces. Mara laughing on the shores of Europa, training together at the Voidwalker Academy, her last words before she disappeared. Don't follow me. But here I was. She turned, or the echo of her did. Her face blurred. Shifting. Almost real. Mara! I shouted. She lifted a hand. And vanished. Not like a hologram shutting off. Not like someone stepping behind a curtain. It was more like she was peeled away from this reality, torn into another that ran parallel, and I couldn't reach it. Couldn't reach her. I dropped to one knee, gasping, blinking hard against the static in my visor. Then something buzzed at my hip, the breach scanner. I pulled it free. The screen showed a trace signal nearby, glowing in deep blue, an object embedded in the remains of a broken memory core. I staggered toward it. It was a data prism, cracked, but intact enough to extract something. I pressed my anchor to its side and started the transfer. The data buzzed into my system with a hiss and pop. A distorted voice began to play, broken by static. Failure is not collapse, collapse is control. I froze. The voice was unmistakable, even through the noise. Deep calm, sharp as ice. Edward Cale. He was supposed to be dead. Everyone believed it. He died in the Black Spire rift 5 years ago. I'd seen the records. I read his final log. I watched the eulogy. But here he was speaking again. Containment failed. The merge is the only answer. Too many timelines, collapsing into noise. I backed away from the prism, pulse racing. The bleed pulsed around me, like it had heard the name too. Edward had been a hero. A genius. He built the code. Founded the Voidwalkers. Trained the first generation. And now, if this was real, he was alive. Working inside the bleed. Planning something massive. I didn't want to believe it. But deep down I already did. Because if he was alive, if he was behind the timeline collapses we'd started to detect, then this wasn't just about anomalies anymore. It was about control. And maybe, just maybe, Mara's disappearance wasn't an accident. The bleed shimmered again, unstable now. Cracking at the edges. I pulled my anchor close and hit the extraction command. The real world yanked me back like a hook through the chest. I tumbled out of the breach, landing hard on the cold deck of Outpost V7's emergency return bay, breath heaving, suit scratched, heart still pounding like a warning bell. Edward Cale was alive, and Mara's signal wasn't a ghost. I didn't know what any of it meant yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I was going back in. I used to think reality was a fixed thing, like the floor beneath your boots, or the crackling hum of a stabilized rift. You step forward, you measure time, you breathe, and things stay in their place. But that belief vanished the moment I stepped through the breach into the fractured timelines. It began with a pulse, just a single beat in my temporal scanner. Faint, like a whisper on the back of my neck. It was the same signature I'd traced in the bleed, the one that shouldn't exist anymore. The one that matched Mara. I keyed in the coordinates manually, overriding Vix's safety protocols. The system tried to lock me out. I overrode it. Again, when you're chasing a ghost, rules start to feel like suggestions. The transition wasn't clean. As soon as I crossed, the world flickered. Like an old film reel skipping frames. Buildings formed, then folded in on themselves. The air smelled like ozone and rusted metal. It was Earth but wrong. I landed on a street in what looked like Neo-Jakarta, or a version of it. The skyline stretched like wet paint. Hover cars idled midair, paused in time. People stood still, frozen mid-step, their eyes vacant. Then, in a sudden breath, everything resumed. Movement returned. The city inhaled. And I saw myself. Across the plaza, standing in full Voidwalker armor, newer, darker, with crimson lines pulsing along the chest plate, was another me. He was giving orders to a squad of armored soldiers. No helmets. Their faces were human, but their eyes were empty. I ducked behind a crumbled statue, watching. The other me barked commands like a man used to being obeyed. His voice was sharp, clipped, robotic. We hold the breach perimeter. If any refugees attempt to flee the collapse zones, terminate them. Terminate. I wanted to believe I heard wrong. But then he turned slightly, and I saw his face. My face. Older. Harder. Scar running down the left jaw. No emotion. A version of me that had chosen obedience over empathy. I stared at him, at myself, until the air cracked and shimmered again. The timeline shifted. And I fell. I woke on my knees in a quiet field. The sky above me was too perfect, a bright blue with drifting white clouds like cotton. Birds chirped. Wind rustled tall golden grass. I blinked. My armor's HUD recalibrated, disoriented by the sudden calm. And then I heard her voice. Adam! I turned slowly. She stood there, barefoot in the grass, smiling. My sister. Mara. Her hair longer than I remembered. I was just as curious. She ran toward me, and for a moment I couldn't move. This wasn't a projection. It wasn't a memory. It was real. Real enough. I stepped back. Mara? She laughed. Of course it's me. Are you okay? No static. No glitch. She touched my arm, warm and steady. My hands trembled inside the gauntlets. I couldn't speak. I wanted to, but my brain was trying to process 1,000 impossible things at once. This wasn't a memory echo. This was a timeline where Mara never joined the Voidwalkers, where she never entered the bleed, where she never died. I dropped to one knee, like the ground was pulling me down. You're alive, I said, breathless. She knelt beside me. What happened to you? I opened my mouth to tell her everything, about the mission, the code, Edward, the pulse, but the words turned to ash. A low hum rippled through the field. My HUD lit up red. A signature spike. No, not yet, I whispered. Not now. The sky above flickered like a broken hologram. She looked around. Adam! I reached for her hand, and she vanished. Like smoke on the wind. I dropped to the grass. Alone again. Vix, I croaked, voice hollow. Here, Adam. Log this timeline. Tag it. I want the coordinates locked. Warning, this reality is unstable. Collapse probability at 87%. I said lock it. There was a pause, then compliance. Locked. I stood up, shaky. Every instinct screamed at me to go back, to stay, to grab her and run before the collapse. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. This wasn't my Mara. Not my timeline. If I took her from here, I'd be doing exactly what Edward was doing, stealing people from where they belonged, remaking the multiverse in our image. I clenched my fists. Then came the voice. Smooth. Confident. Familiar. You see now, don't you? It echoed around me, from the grass and the air and the broken sky. Edward. You could have her back. You almost did. All I need is your help, Adam. Just one timeline. One world. One sacrifice. I didn't answer him. Not yet. I stepped through the next breach and left my sister behind again. But I didn't cry. Not this time. Because now I understood what Edward was offering. And why I'd have to stop him. They locked me in a white room with no corners. The walls curved into the ceiling like the inside of an egg. Sterile. Seamless. No shadows. The light was artificial, too even, too clean, like it had been filtered through 1,000 bureaucrats before it reached my eyes. A voice spoke from nowhere. State your name and designation. I stayed silent. A pause. Then again colder. State your name and designation for the record. My name is Adam Viral. Voidwalker Sentinel. Breach Class Operative, Badge AV-09. There was a hum, low and mechanical, like something behind the wall was scanning my words for lies. You are being charged with insubordination, unauthorized breach traversal, tampering with classified data, and unlawful exposure to collapsed timelines. How do you plead? I plead tired, I muttered. The voice didn't respond. Humor didn't compute here. The wall in front of me shimmered and turned transparent. Behind it sat 3 high-ranking officers of the Voidwalkers Council, their faces still and unreadable. Commander Thane was in the middle, gray hair, black eyes, skin like sandblasted steel. He was old enough to have written parts of the code himself. To his left sat Lauren, a technician turned judge. She didn't look at me. She just scrolled through something on her holopad, probably weighing my fate like an equation. To his right, Admiral Klett. Younger, sharper, and very much not a fan of mine. His voice came first. You accessed a Class 7 anomaly without clearance, crossed into the bleed unescorted, retrieved corrupted data, and then disappeared from all trackers for 13 hours. Why? Because I saw my sister. Because I heard a ghost. Because Edward Cale, the man you all declared dead, is very much alive and trying to collapse the multiverse into a box he can control. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet. Instead, I looked them each in the eye. Because your system is broken. Thane's expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Not surprise. Not anger. Just exhaustion. Like he already knew. You broke the code, Viral. So did he, I snapped. Kale is alive. I have the logs. I saw him inside the bleed. Lauren finally looked up. You're claiming Edward Kale faked his death and is manipulating interdimensional collapse patterns from within a collapsed timeline. That's exactly what I'm claiming. And your proof? In the core drive I brought back. You sealed it. Silence. Thane leaned forward. The code exists for a reason, Adam. We do not intervene. We do not interfere. Even if interference is already happening? My voice rose, sharper than I meant. You don't get it. He's not observing. He's rebuilding. Combining timelines, collapsing others. I saw an Earth where I never existed. I saw one where Mara lived. The room got cold at her name. You're compromised, Klett said. Emotionally. Psychologically. That's why you shouldn't have been on the outer rotation. I clenched my fists. You think this is about grief? This is about truth. You're hiding it. You're letting him reshape the multiverse because it's easier than admitting your rules don't work anymore. Thane stood. His voice was quiet. We protect what remains. That's all we were ever meant to do. I took a step closer to the glass. And what happens when nothing remains? He didn't answer. He just nodded once. The wall went opaque again. And that was that. They didn't sentence me. They didn't release me. They left me in the egg room, suspended in protocol, like a corrupted file they couldn't delete but didn't dare open. For hours, maybe days, I sat there. And then the light flickered. Not a glitch, something purposeful. A stutter of shadows across the seamless walls. I stood alert. A low hiss, like decompressing air. Then a section of the wall peeled away, folding into itself like paper under heat. A figure stepped in, slim, in a standard Voidwalker trainee suit. Alex. She was younger than me by nearly a decade, but already known for hacking ship AI just to see if she could. Brilliant, stubborn, and reckless in the way I used to be. You look terrible, she said. Thanks. You here to read me bedtime stories? No. I'm here to bust you out. I blinked. You serious? She held up a hex core disruptor, black and humming. Deadly. A moment passed. Then I laughed. Alex, they'll put a kill order on you. She grinned. Already did. We moved fast. She overrode the corridor defenses, used a time lag field to skip past sensors, and slipped us into the lower gravity ducts. I didn't ask how she got the clearance codes. I had a feeling I didn't want to know. As we moved, alarms began to echo in distant sections of the station, but not for us. Alex handed me a small chip. What's this? The core you recovered. I cracked it open. My pulse jumped. And? She looked at me with something like fear in her eyes. It's not just Kale, Adam. He's not working alone. Some of the council, they're helping him. I stopped walking. What? They think if they help him build this prime reality, they'll end up on the right side of it. Like they'll be gods in a finished story. My throat went dry. How much time do we have? Alex tapped her wrist. A projection lit up, dozens of timelines marked in red, already collapsing. Not enough, she said. But maybe just enough to stop him. And then, without looking back, she said, Come on. Let's break the code. And I followed her into the dark. I knew something was wrong the moment the stars began to scream. Not in sound. There's no sound in the vacuum between worlds, but in the way the light twisted. Like someone had grabbed the edges of the universe and was folding it in on itself. Every timeline, every thread of reality I'd ever walked through, trembled at once. Some blinked out. Some flickered like dying embers. And one turned to face me. It was Earth, but not ours. The sky above it shimmered with fractures, like cracked glass held together by memory. Cities floated in the air, upside down. Oceans moved in reverse, falling into the sky as if gravity had changed its mind. And over all of it pulsed a steady, mechanical heartbeat, the rhythm of the merge. Edward had started it. I stood at the edge of that collapsing world, inside the cockpit of my rift piercer. A ship not built for beauty, but to survive impossible physics. Beside me, Alex stared at the readings, her eyes wide, her hands trembling. That's the signal, she whispered. Singularity pulse is sinking from the core of this timeline. If it completes the cycle, all lower timelines will merge into one. I finished, my voice hollow. And everything else will cease to exist. I didn't wait. I dove. The rift piercer screamed as we broke into that world. Debris whipped past us, pieces of buildings, fragments of time, people frozen mid-motion, a man laughing in midair, a child running backward, an entire train hanging in a loop, endlessly derailing and rebuilding itself. This was what Edward had done. He hadn't just found a way to control timelines. He had decided which ones deserved to survive. We landed in the remains of a city square. The ground pulsed beneath us, glowing faint blue, then red, then white. Reality didn't know what shape it was supposed to be anymore. And in the center of it all, standing on a platform made of fused timelines and decayed history, was Edward Cale. He hadn't aged. Or maybe he had, and the timeline just didn't care enough to show it. His eyes glowed faintly with echo light, the signature of someone who'd lived in more than one reality at once. His coat moved like it was underwater, flickering between cloth and energy. He looked at me like a disappointed teacher. "You're late, Adam," he said. "I thought you'd come sooner. I even left the door open." "You're destroying everything," I said. My voice came out low, brittle. "You're folding timelines like paper, trying to find one that fits your version of perfection." He tilted his head. "No, Adam. I'm saving what can be saved. What should be saved. You and I both know how fragile these threads are. I'm giving them structure. Purpose. You're playing God." Edward's smile was sad. "God is just a word we use when we run out of explanations. I'm giving reality a center. A truth. Something permanent in a sea of chaos." I stepped forward. The ground warped beneath me. For a moment I saw myself, older, angrier, standing in Edward's place. Then the vision flickered and vanished. "I saw her," I said. "I saw Mara in one of the threads." "Was that you?" "No," Edward said gently. "That was the universe showing you what you wanted. But yes, you could have her back. You still can. She's alive in one of the stabilizing layers. Help me finish the merge, and I'll lock her timeline into the new reality. You'll have her again. Whole. Breathing. Real." My heart slammed in my chest. He knew. Of course he did. He'd built this trap with me in mind. Mara had been the bait from the beginning. I wanted to scream. I wanted to believe him. But I remembered what it felt like to hold her helmet after that breach. I remembered the silence where her voice used to be. The ache of something gone forever. "If I do this," I said slowly, "what happens to the others? The timelines where other people live, laugh, love, do they matter?" Edward's smile didn't falter. But something in his eyes changed. Grew cold. "Not all versions are meant to survive. We're trimming the chaos, Adam. This is mercy." I stared at him. Then I looked up at the sky. There were fewer stars now. "I can't do it," I said. "I can't do it," I said. Edward's expression hardened. "Then you're sentencing her to death again. You're choosing it." "No," I said quietly. "I'm choosing not to be you." He moved fast, reality around him bending to his will. He struck with a blade made of temporal fire. I ducked, rolled, and ran for the pulse. It stood like a tower of glass, vibrating at the center of a time storm. Alex was already there, plugging in a virus code we'd built from the recovered data core. 2 minutes, she yelled over the chaos. Edward roared behind us, throwing loops of paradox in our path, repeating the same second over and over, trying to trap us in infinite stasis. But I'd been walking the void too long. I'd learned how to break through. I sprinted past him, reached the core. My hand hovered over the final input. One press, and the pulse would stop. But the layer with Mara in it would collapse with it. She'd be gone. Forever this time. One press. She smiled in my mind. A memory. Or maybe a goodbye. I pressed. The pulse shattered. Light poured out of the sky. The collapsing world sighed. And then, everything went still. The storm passed. Edward was gone. Maybe erased. Maybe displaced. I stood there, hands shaking, watching the fractures seal themselves one by one. The stars returned. But I knew they weren't the same stars. Not anymore. And neither was I. The sky above was cracked like old glass, jagged fractures glowing with pale blue light. Pieces of reality floated around me. Half a street lamp, the back seat of a car, a child's tricycle spinning slowly in zero gravity. This world had no wind, no time, just silence and motion looping in place. I stood at the edge of a collapsing timeline. My boots hovered inches above a sidewalk that rewound itself every 12 seconds. A bird took off, froze, shimmered, and landed again. Over and over. He was waiting for me in the center of it all. Edward Cale looked older than I remembered. The once proud silver streaks in his beard had gone fully white, and his Voidwalker suit hung loosely on his frame. His eyes, though, those were sharp as ever. Calculating. Watching me like a puzzle he already knew how to solve. "You came," he said. I wasn't sure you would. Didn't really have a choice, I said. My voice felt hollow in the looped space. You're collapsing time itself. Kind of gets a guy's attention. He smiled, not unkindly. Time collapses itself, Adam. I'm just showing it the fastest route. I walked closer, one careful step at a time. This timeline, what is it? A memory? No. A graveyard. This version of Earth failed the Accord's entry trials. War. Starvation. Then silence. I saved it. You're looping it in on itself, I said. That's not saving. That's preserving a corpse. He chuckled quietly. You sound like I used to. Loyal to the code. Blind to its limitations. I reached into my pack, my fingers brushing the emergency disruptor tucked beside a quantum marker. I didn't pull it out. Not yet. I wanted to hear him. You want to collapse every timeline that doesn't match your vision? I asked. What gives you that right? He raised his hand, and the sky shimmered. A window opened above us, no bigger than a screen, but inside it I saw her. Mara. Not a memory. Not a recording. A live feed. She sat on a porch I didn't recognize, reading a book. Her hair was shorter. She looked older than the day she disappeared. But it was her. I found one where she survived, Edward said softly. Where the breach never took her. Where you died instead. I couldn't move. She's real, he said. Breathing. Alive. Right now. This timeline, her timeline, is about to be overwritten unless you let the merge complete. You can bring her home. My throat felt tight. I took a step toward the image before I caught myself. You're manipulating me. I'm offering you closure. Redemption. No, I said, though my voice trembled. You're offering me a lie. One life in exchange for infinite others. That's not redemption. That's theft. He stepped closer. You have no idea what it's like to watch billions die just because the Accord chose not to interfere. I do, I said. I watched my sister vanish because of that same code. But you taught us it wasn't about control. It was about responsibility. And now you've abandoned it. He looked down for a moment. I was wrong before. I thought the multiverse could protect itself. But look at it, fraying at the edges, rotting from inside. We needed a design. A better version of reality. And if Mara had survived in our world, I asked, would you still be doing this? That got him. Just for a second, the confidence slipped. You can't save everyone, he said, quieter now. No, I replied. But I won't be the one who chooses who lives and who vanishes. That's not what a Voidwalker is. He turned away, muttering something under his breath. Around us, the loop faltered. The ground rippled. Something was changing. The singularity pulse was reaching critical. I can still save her, he said, more to himself than me. I can stabilize her timeline. I just need more time. I pulled the disruptor from my pack. You've had time, I said. He looked up. If you do this, she's gone. I aimed it at the pulse core, a swirling sphere of red light held in place by shifting metal arms. My hand shook. Every instinct screamed. My sister was right there. But I pressed the trigger. A single tone pierced the silence. The disruptor hummed, then surged. The air twisted, time stuttered, and the sky cracked wide. The pulse shattered. So did the vision. Mara's image fractured like a mirror, then vanished. I collapsed to my knees. It felt like dying, like killing her all over again. Edward stood perfectly still, his mouth open slightly, eyes empty. Then he turned and walked into the collapse without another word. The timeline swallowed him. The loop unraveled. The world went dark. And I was alone again, floating between worlds. But this time, I knew what I'd done. I had chosen the code. And paid the price. The air inside Outpost V7 felt different now, quieter, yet charged with a strange new energy. The chaos of the singularity pulse was over, but its echoes still hummed faintly beneath the surface of reality. I stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring out into the fracture where worlds once collided and died. The rift was calm now, a slow swirl of blues and blacks folding in on themselves like some impossible cosmic dance. The Accord was no more. Its iron grip had finally cracked, shattered by the very chaos it tried to contain. We Voidwalkers were free at last, no longer pawns in a game where silence and obedience were weapons against truth. I helped draft the new code, one written in blood and loss, in clarity and choice. Preserve what we can. Witness what must pass. But never forget the cost. The burden of the old code weighed on me still, but I felt lighter somehow. I had become more than a sentinel following orders. I was a guardian of the space between worlds, and now, one who could choose when to step forward or step back. Behind me, the hum of the outpost's engines flickered as my eyes caught a movement near the rift. A figure stepped through the shimmering veil, slow and deliberate. My breath caught. The silhouette was familiar, slim, graceful. For a moment, my heart whispered the impossible. She was there. Or rather, something like her. Mara. The memory of her smile, sharp and bright, flashed across my mind, stirring old wounds and quiet hopes. But this was no reunion, no miracle. The breach held echoes and shadows, fragments of what was and could have been. I knew better than to chase ghosts. I took a step back, letting the figure drift away into the swirling light. This time, I did not follow. I had learned that some things must be left behind, even love. The Voidwalkers' new mission was clear: to watch with open eyes, to protect without destroying, to honor the fragile threads that bind existence without trying to weave them into something only we could control. The space between worlds was vast and uncertain, but I was ready to walk it, no longer burdened by the past, but guided by a new code. A code that understood loss, embraced choice, and accepted that sometimes the hardest part of guarding the multiverse was learning when to let go. I turned from the rift and felt the weight of countless worlds settle gently on my shoulders. The future was a fractal of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid to face it. Because now I was free.